Alright, so we began last week in Halacha Basar בחלב, Siman Pei Zayin. And before we go on to the next Sif, which is Sif Dalet, it's good to go over some of the concepts that we've covered, a brief review, which will help us throughout Basar בחלב. These are ideas, concepts that are very, very important to keep in mind at all times because they come up various times in Basar בחלב and in Mikvaot Taaruvot, which we've covered already. So we'll be going through them a little bit. The various machlokot, for example, regarding the famous topic called tam keikar, which we'll briefly discuss today again. So we can understand what exactly is going on, what is forbidden, what is the machloket concerning some of those issues. And, of course, we'll be going through, as I said last time, the various degrees of bishul. Because when we say bishul, which means cooking, there are various forms of cooking. And the only time that we are concerned about the various forms of cooking until now is usually in Halacha Shabbat. Because bishul is a melacha that is forbidden on Shabbos. But even though it's forbidden on Shabbos, what if it's already cooked? And I just want to put it on a warmer, on top of the crock pot. I want to put it back on the fire, it's already cooked. So we have a concept called en bishul achar bishul in Halacha Shabbat. But that's not so simple. Because even though in Shabbat there's a concept called en bishul achar bishul, which means there's no cooking after cooking. Once you're done with the cooking, it's cooked. Can you recook it? Well, yes and no. If it's liquid, it could be warmed up and heated up again, and that, according to some, is called cooking. If it's a solid, there may not be a problem most of the time with you recooking it, but there could be a marit ayin. Marit ayin means people don't know. People see you putting something in the fire. Oh, he's cooking. No, but it's cooked, but he doesn't have the chance to ask. And you know what rumors are made of. You know, people spread the rumor, people get the wrong ideas, people misunderstand you. So the Chachamim were very concerned about something called marit ayin, that they told us something which is also mipnei marit ayin meaning because of what the eye sees or perceives, afilu bechadre chadarim asur. It will be even forbidden in your closet. Nobody sees me in the closet. Well, we're not going to make a distinction between your closet, your bedroom, your living room, your kitchen. If it's asur, it's asur. Marit ayin is marit ayin. So some things are forbidden only because people may get the wrong ideas. We will see this concept of marit ayin in Basar b'chalav too. Hopefully we'll get to it today. Something may not be asur min Torah, but may be asur midrabanan, by rabbinic decree. Either because it resembles the real thing and people may make a mistake, or because, as we just said, marit ayin, which is another idea, but it's also midrabanan. So bishul. What's so special about bishul? Well, bishul is very unique in Ilchot Basar b'chalav because this is a very unique issur in itself, that the Torah forbids the combination of the two by way of bishul. Not just eating them together, as we explained, they have to have been cooked together. Now, what does it mean cooked together? Perhaps we should go to a machloket, a very interesting machloket, Abai and Rava, which we didn't cover yet, that discuss this problem of basar b'chalav. Basar b'chalav is a problem when the basar and the chalav or both each get the tam of the other. Okay? Each or the two of them get the tam, the flavor of the other. There's a problem when they absorb the flavor of the other. That's when they become asur, as the Gemara says in Chulin. Okay? If there is no tam, if there is no flavor, you could mix the two a whole day, soak it. If there's no flavor of the basar in the chalav, or the chalav in the basar, then there's no issur. What's the reason behind that? So, Abaye holds that no nesa basar b'chalav is not forbidden only because of tam keikar, unless you have the tam. And Abaye is the one that learns tam keikar from basar b'chalav, where there are other sources who learn tam keikar from other Gemaras, other isurim. And I'm going to get into what tam keikar soon is, the various machlokot of tam keikar. But for those of you who are not familiar with tam keikar, loosely translated, it means that the tam of something, the flavoring of an issur, is like the real issur itself. So if somebody threw in a piece of nevela into the pot, and later on he took it out, so that we're not eating the treif hot dog or whatever, it's out. We were able to identify it. We somehow managed to take it out, but it left behind some flavor of the real Isser. And that flavor is Asur. Is it also min Torah? Is it also min Rabbana? Under what circumstances is it also? That's the famous machlokes of tam ke'ikar. But just to understand the concept, tam means the flavor, and the tam ke'ikar means the flavor is equivalent to the real ikar Isser. So even though I don't have the Isser anymore, all I have is its flavor that it left behind, and I don't have enough in the tafshil to neutralize the flavor. I don't have 60, for example. Right? Then I have a problem. I can't eat the food. All of this is the flavor of the treif hot dog. So what? Flavor is a problem in the same way that the real Isser is a problem. That's called tam ke'ikar. So is tam ke'ikar midoraita or midrabanan or whatever? We'll talk maybe about it a little bit later again. This is a big topic, tam ke'ikar. So Abaye wants to say that he learns tam ke'ikar doraita from Basar b'chalav. Because in Basar b'chalav, we see that there is an emphasis on the absorption of the tam in the basar. Otherwise, there's no Isser. There's only an Isser if each or the other received the flavor from the other. Otherwise, there's no Isser. So he says, and that comes from the fact that tam is ke'ikar.
But what's the ikar? If the whole Isser is based on tam,
yes,
then who is the ikar? The Isser is the tam, not the ikar. You're telling me the exact opposite. The ikar is asur, in other words, the guf hadavar.
Right.
It's asur because of the tam.
Right, in this
so now
case.
tam isn't ikar. Ikar is ketam.
Yes, but because Basar b'chalav is unique, it's different.
But that's what I'm finding a little confusing.
Right.
Tam ke'ikar, usually I understand that if I only have the presence of the taste and the substance itself is absent, the fact that it is present introduces the same prohibition as though the substance was present as well.
Yes.
But now he's telling me
he's telling us that we were feeling. Remember,
right?
We're feeling the tam. We're feeling the tam in the basar.
Yes.
We don't have necessarily the mamashas.
And that constitutes. That is the basis. That's why it's aser.
Right.
So, what role does the substance have now, other than being the media through which the taste is transferred that constitutes her?
Yeah.
So then tam isn't ke'ikar. Ikar, substance, is like tam, to the degree that
in other words, but the
way the bias is it not?
They carry the majority.
No, that's something. No. It just means that it is like the real thing, even though Basar b'chalav is different. All it means is that obviously it has an effect. It has an effect on creating an Isser, even though all I have left behind is its flavor and not the mamashas of Isser.
So you're saying that, of course, if the milk is in the meat, that constitutes the Isser.
Right.
Now, even if the milk is already absent, but the taste is still present.
That's correct, yeah.
From this you learn tam ke'ikar.
Right.
Okay, so then I misunderstood.
Yeah. So that's the only way it would be Asr. Yeah. Sure.
If it is true, then here we're introducing a different can become usher. Only by the acquisition of the taste of the, and then it was removed from the milk. It was not cooked.
Right.
But that retains the flavor.
It won't really retain the flavor as much, and we will see why in a moment.
When is the presence of the flavor a problem? When it was cooked together. Once it was cooked together. Now, if there is, then you have a biblical prohibition.
Cooked together and there's no flavor, then it's
60. What does 60 accomplish? It was cooked together, but there's.
Now Rava says something.
Were you allowed to cook it together if there's 60, or does it only help with the? If there was 60 in the meat against the milk,
right?
Were you in violation of the prohibition of cooking?
Yeah, there's a Ramban on that. I think Rabbi Elyahu and Ramban on that. What happens if there's 60? In other words, you may not have the tam habasar in the challah, but you will have the tam chalav in the basar, because that's what eventually. That's what will happen, right? You're saying is there's 60 chalav against the basar, so you may not have the tam abasar of the meat in the chalav as a result of that, but you will still have the tam hachalav of the milk in the basar. In other words, you have to have the two of them.
I understand.
Is that what your question was?
No,
your question was...
what you're saying,
yeah.
I don't understand, because with respect to biblical, we're talking about
biblical, right,
rabbinical.
right.
With respect to biblical, if I have an Isser, an outright Isser, Roiv, Daraisa is sufficient unless I have a Tam.
That's
and
correct.
The question is the 60 of the Tam, the 60 is rabbinical,
right.
Right? But as long as I have a Tam,
then it's a Daraisa, it continues to be a Daraisa.
So, but
there's a Tam.
But if I have a Roiv, that means
even if you have the Roiv, if you hold Tam Ki'ika, remember?
Right, if you call Tam Keter the
Raisa, right?
Then,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Then but still the shearer would be the.
Yes.
The Raisa would be enough to have someone taste it.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, because once you don't have the taste, it's not a problem. Sure. Now Rava says that of course the problem in Basar b'chalav is the tam, is that you have to have tam, but tam can only be accomplished through bishul. He says it a little bit different. The reason why the Torah asers through bishul is that's the only way you really have tam. Okay, so he learns it a little bit different than Abaya, who holds the whole idea is you have to have tam ki'ikar in order for it to be aser, right? Rava says the only reason why the tam is why bishul is aser is because bishul is what accomplishes tam. In other words, they both hold you have to have the tam. But Rava learns it a little bit different, that the only way you can have the tam is if you have the bishul. So it's a little bit different. So if you don't have tam, that means you don't really have bishul, right? It goes both ways. With bishul, you probably will have tam. If you don't have tam, that means you really didn't have bishul. Okay, if that's the case, that you have bishul, you have tam, you have a unique isser here of basar, of a combination of basar b'chalav. Let's go through a little bit the halachas of bishul, or the various degrees of bishul. What kind of bishul are we talking about? Are we talking about a regular bishul on top of the fire? Or what happens if you remove the pot from the fire? So for those who remember Hilchas Shabbos, there's something called Kli Rishon, there's something called Irui, there's something called Kli Sheni, Kli Shlishi. And for those of you who were in Taaruvot, we also discussed other concepts called Tato Govar, Tzli, roasting without liquids, barbecuing. There's different kinds of, or different levels of heat where you can accomplish something very, very similar of combining two flavors, but through various different means. And they're not all the same. If you cook on the fire, we all know that it's very different than if you bake something in the oven. I mean, there's different recipes. One calls for on top of the stove or in the oven, and there's even a difference if you cover the cake or the chicken that you're making in the oven, if you cover it with aluminum foil or you leave it exposed.
Sure.
Yeah, there's differences. Yeah, right. So there's different levels of different degrees of fire. So when we're talking about basar b'chalav being asu because of the combination of the two, minatora, would that apply to any form of any kind of heat? Because last time when we spoke about it, we said that kovush would not qualify it in the Torah. Kovush means that I soak the meat in milk for 24 hours, let's say. Soaking or kovush is a form of flavoring, you may call it, something. That is how you make pickles. And kovush is a problem when you're dealing with isser, right? You have a piece of basar nevela, non-kosher meat, kosher piece of meat. They were both nichbeshu together in water, or worse, if they were nichbeshu in brine. You know what brine is, right?
Sure.
Or anything of an acidic nature, that could result in it being asr just as much as if it was cooked, because it has the effect of putting in the tam into, or the flavor into the basar kshera. So.
But meat is a dairy. How can you get a taste of meat from another meat?
Right.
Min b'mino.
Min b'mino. Yeah. That's a very good point. How can you detect that? You can't. So you would have to go by what the rabbis tell you, that after a certain amount of time, it has accomplished the Isser was penetrated.
The question with him is,
Yeah.
so now the meat that you're tastes like meat, like nevela meat, or like kosher?
We don't know.
That's the problem. That's not the solution. That's the problem.
Right. So no.
The step on the packaging that tells you this is kosher. Anything you have that tells you this is kosher.
No. That's already a separate issue. So, but your first question was a very good question. What do we do if we can't figure out if it has the flavor? So, a real quick introduction about flavoring. You never have that advantage or the opportunity to taste it because you're not allowed to taste the piece of meat to see, let me see if it tastes like treif or not. You can't do that, but you can ask a goy to taste it for you, all right?
And then the question would be...
According to the Mechaber, according to some opinions. But that's only when that is possible. In your example, that's not possible because it's min b'mino. Min b'mino means that two are of the same. So what do we do when the two are of the same? Right? Then you don't have that advantage of asking a kafela, or a chef, or a goy, and you have to go by the shiurim that the Chachamim gave us. That if you have 60 times the kosher versus the non-kosher item, then it has neutralized the flavoring. Now, you may go to the supermarket and buy juice. Guava juice. You just love guava juice. Now, the guava juice, you look at the ingredients, and it has something called carmine. That's made from cats. carmine, זה רכיב שמוציאים אותו מחתולים. לא, במיץ הזה, כן. Or there's something called coquino that's made from bugs. Now, why would they put it in? Because they want to make it red. And some people don't like the artificial red 40. Red 40, if you see it in some food items, is artificial, it's chemicals.
So you're safe.
So some people say, oh no, I don't want to give you the artificial chemicals. I want to give you the real thing. Natural. From cats and from bugs and from all these things.
Don't they have in Japan red ant?
Yeah. I've heard the fire ants, but the red...
No, they have...
Anyway, so what are you going to do? Are you going to drink this juice or not? You say, but there is a K on it. A K, yeah.
A letter K?
A letter K, kosher.
How come? From the letter K.
Yeah. How come? So you're getting back to your question, is it kosher or not? Yes or no? Because the amount that's in this bottle is batel. It's really cancelled. In reality, it is as though it doesn't exist. You won't even feel it. Okay? Now, will a good organization give its approval or supervision over this? No. Why? You can't taste it. You can't detect it. Because of other halachas that we've learned already in halakhot Taaruvot, that ein mevatlin isur lechatchila. You don't do this intentionally. No, lechatchila, you take treif, and you put it into 200 or 300 gallons. They won't detect it anyway, and it does something to the food.
But by the way, this is similar of the food.
Right, so that's you're right. So it's a different question. You're saying if it enhances, if it's an enhancer, it's a really separate question. Right. So you see, so that's why not all organizations are reliable.
How reliable is
Right. Yeah.
How come?
What? It's not necessarily okay. I agree with you. Because anybody can put a K. You can also put a K.
The K with the
No, simple, plain K. A plain K.
That's not a K.
It can be.
Which K?
No. There are some Ks that are very, very good.
Just K?
Very, very good. But we don't know when you look at it who put that K. Did Joe put K? Did this guy put the K? Who put the K? Anybody. There's no patent on the K.
And did he put the K?
Anyway, you see what I mean? So now, is it taref? No, it's not taref because it's batel. You understand what I mean by batel? This is such a minute amount. There's 60. So getting back to your question, so you're seeing some food items that are placed together, over a period of time will absorb the flavor, right? And it's going to become a problem if there's the flavoring of something iser that was transferred to that which is kosher in any form, even through kavush, soaked. It's soaked in a brine which is not kosher, right? Let's say fish. Here's a problem we're going to be discussing in a little bit about Basar to smoking. What's wrong with smoking fish? I mean, you want to buy a smoked salmon. You know, first of all, the ingredients behind the smoking. Was this fish smoked with other fish together or in close proximity? Oh, so then you have to discuss the question of recha, of the vaporing, of the flavoring. I mean, does that affect it? So these are some of the kinds of questions that you have to deal with when you have other forms of flavor transfer. Let's call it flavor transfer. Kavush is almost like mevushal. The commentaries tell us that the process of soaking something, for a certain period of time accomplishes a great deal, but not in basar b'chalav. In basar b'chalav, this is not what the Torah had in mind when it said bishul. Bishul, it meant through heat. And we're going to talk about how much heat. Not necessarily.
No, we don't write that by what?
I don't know. We don't know yet.
That's what everybody says.
No, we don't know yet. That's
bishul is water.
Water.
Bishul is
water. You're saying the word bishul. The word bishul is through water. That's correct. Yeah, but what we don't know yet, what we want to discuss now, does that include roasting, which is without water? Right. Yeah, because what we want to know, what did the Torah have in mind here? Heat, just heat, or it has to be with water. Now,
any liquid, no? Any liquid, or is
it could be any liquid. That's correct. Now, there are various degrees of cooking, of even bishul, because as we began to say, there's kli rishon, there's kli sheni, and so forth. On Shabbat, for example, it's significant because you want to make tea, and all you have is a tea bag. And a tea bag on Shabbat is a problem because some consider the tea bag or tea leaves in the bag as kalei habishul, things that easily cook. Things that easily cook even in lower temperature, not in boiling temperature. So therefore, you cannot immerse the tea bag into a hot cup of water because you may be cooking it. Most things are cooked on top of the stove, on a real fire. It needs time to cook. Some things are cooked with less heat. They're easy to cook. Kalei habishul.
And the
right.
Yeah. Has a problem with putting tea leaves. It's the spreading of the color.
Of the color, but that's because of the color. Tzovea.
That's already cold. Yeah, but he says.
Oh, he considers the tzovea part of the bishul part?
Right.
Oh, I see. Could be. I don't remember that. Yeah, possible. But we don't hold like that. The tzovea itself is not always an issue in food.
Right.
So anyway, there are ways to accomplish using a tea bag. There are ways to use a tea bag on Shabbat by kli shlishi, right? Instead of a kli rishon or kli sheni, which may be still a problem, you take the hot water, you pour into one glass and into another glass, and then you can have your tea bag. When people ask me, what do you do about tea on Shabbat? I tell them, first of all, I don't drink that much tea. I drink, coffee. But what's the problem with having nest tea? Nest tea is a powder form. It's been cooked already. Why should you use the bag? So they tell me, how could you use those powder? You must not be Persian, right? Because
they're right.
They're right. Yeah. If you want the real tea, you have to have the leaves. If you have the leaves, then there's another solution. Prepare before Shabbat. Cook it before Shabbat and prepare the tea essence. Right, that's all. Anyway, there are various ways around it. Let's not get off too much the topic. So in Basar v'chalav, we want to understand what did the Torah really have in mind. So we know that bishul, in the real bishul, if it's done exactly the way we understand it on top of the fire, it also brings about an isur of achila and an isur of hana. We cannot eat that which has been cooked, and we cannot benefit from it. We discussed that before. Achila means I cannot eat that which was cooked. Had it not been cooked, I may not eat it midorabanan, but midoraita, I have an isser to eat the combination of basar v'chalav that have been cooked together, and I cannot even benefit from it. I can feed it to the dog. I cannot sell it and so forth. All right. What about kli rishon? Kli rishon is a concept that's used in Shabbat, whether it's the pot that is no longer sitting on the stove that has been removed, kli rishon shehusa me'al ha'esh, or it's the actual pot sitting on top of the fire, which we already know is asur. But it still continues to be called so, a kli rishon, once you remove it from the fire. It's still very, very hot. Kli rishon that you remove from the fire is still very, very hot, even though there's no fire underneath anymore. You removed it, you put it on the countertop. Hopefully it's not a formica countertop. Not a good idea. Yeah.
Absorbed.
Especially if it's, the metal.
Or whatever.
The metal helps retain some of the heat. Yeah. So what's the din of basar b'chalav in a kli rishon that was removed from the fire? So we're talking about a Kli Rishon that is obviously Yad Soledet Bo, which is another concept that you learn in Hilchos Shabbos. That means if I put my hand in, I immediately take it out. I can't keep it there too long.
Not too long, you're right.
Not too long.
Around 7.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. It depends on your hand.
Yeah, no, I mean the average.
The average, right.
Starts early.
Right. Yeah.
You have to be sure.
So what's the halacha? Right? What would you say the halacha is? Huh? It's still bishul. Exactly.
We're talking about size.
It's still isur. It's still asur according to basically everybody minatorah. Even though it's not cooking right now, it's still, because it's a Kli Rishon, it's Yad Soledet Bo, it's still considered a bishul minatorah. How about irui? Let's go on to the next level. Irui is when the hot water, boiling hot water, is coming down. So it's out of a Kli Rishon. Thank you. So you're pouring it. Let's say you have a percolator. Percolator is a Kli Rishon. You open up the faucet. It's irui. It's coming down. Right? Some people, you will notice on Shabbos, they're makbid not to put the coffee, the Nescafe, into the cup and pour the hot water directly on it. They first let the hot water land into the glass or cup, then they put the coffee. It's okay. You don't really have to do that, only because the coffee has already been cooked and roasted. The question is if roasting is cooking, that's where there's a chumrah here. You don't really have to be makbid on that. Okay? Because if you let the hot water land into the glass, by the time it lands, it cools off a couple degrees. Then if you put the coffee inside, it's less of a problem than if you have the hot water land directly onto the coffee. Because according to the way we learn, irui has some strength, so much strength to be mevashul kedei klipa, that it doesn't have the strength of a pot of food on top of the fire, because it's coming down, right? It's not like you're cooking it on the fire, but it has enough koach, strength, to cook that which it falls onto, like a small little klipa. How would you say klipa?
Peel.
A little peel, a little thin slice. Okay?
And
Now,
also,
just for you to understand what does it mean kedei klipa, because you may not have heard these expressions before. There are times that we are concerned about the edges of certain foods because they came in contact with something which is not kosher. For example, let's say you went to the fish market and the guy says, "Oh, I'll clean up the fish for you," and he chops it off. Wait a minute, he's using that same knife that he was using for the squid and the octopus. Is it okay? In the olden days, when our Jewish mothers used to go to the fish market, they used to take their own sakin, their own knife. Yeah, please use my knife. Now, it's cold. Nothing is being cooked, but the knife is sharp. And the knife may have absorbed that which is not kosher, the fats and so forth. But because it's not hot and it's not cooking process, we're only concerned about the edges. So the worst comes to worst, you can cut away the edges which may have absorbed a little of the fat of that knife, or rinse it very well, and then you're okay. So this is a similar concept to klipa over here. When we're talking about irui mevashel kedei klipa, we're saying that it can only go so far. It cannot cook your whole food, this hot water coming down, but it does cook a little bit. It's hot enough to cook a little bit. Kedei klipa, but it's still a problem. Yeah. Yeah, right. No, but it's not batel because it's there.
It didn't spread.
It didn't spread. It's not batel. You have to remove it. It's there. Whenever you see an isur, oh, it's batel in 200, but you recognize it. You can't. You can't. When you recognize the isur, and isur fell into a pot. Oh, there it is. But there's 100 pieces in there. So what? I recognize it. I have to take it out.
Well, there's two different dealing. The 100 pieces help with the taste, but the presence of it itself that's recognized, it's bad.
No, not only with the taste, he wants to be mevatel the real isur.
No, so he can't, because the 100 doesn't help with the isur, it's be'ain. The isur is
it's be'ain, right. See, that's what I meant by recognizing it. Yeah. Yes. Right.
And you know that one of them, of the three, is Tarek, and you can, according to the Torah, is Batel.
Yes.
You can eat the one that you eat.
No,
say
no, no.
it is
But you don't know which one it is.
You don't know which one, that's why.
But you know that one of them.
No, it
a
makes no
different
difference.
story.
That makes no difference.
That's a different story.
From the tree we have for sure.
That's the koach of bitul. Bitul means that if I have enough to cancel, it's called to cancel, to be mevatel, it's batal.
But only if I don't know
You
which
don't know
one.
which
I don't know which one
You
it
don't know
is.
which
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
But
What-
you know, but if
Yeah.
You know the whole,
there
you
is
know,
one.
you know the whole pot has a little bit of trip meat. You know the whole pot has a little
Yeah,
bit of bacon.
yeah. If you don't know, it can be batel. Once you recognize it, you have to remove it. Then you still have a problem with the taste. All right. And so anyway,
But to what you klipa,
Yeah.
especially klipa, tatagavar, no?
yes, that's correct.
And the reason that adding the coffee afterwards helps,
Yeah.
it's also an argument, I think, because the water are cooled down by the body
That's
of
what
the
we
vessel.
that's what we just explained. Right. Yeah.
So
So that's the advantage of letting the water come down first, and every time it's water or liquid or hot liquid is transferred, it continues to cool down. The dafnot, right, the walls of the vessel, of the cup, and so forth, cool off the hot water. That's why you transfer it, it becomes a kli sheni. You transfer, it becomes a kli shi, right? And with every transfer, the water is cooling off. All right. So anyway, klipa is a small layer. You have it in various other halachot of Taaruvot and in halakhot Melicha as well, where sometimes something does not penetrate completely the food. It only goes so far, as kedei klipa, kedei netila, right? But it does not go completely. It does not answer the whole thing. So worst comes to worst, you may have to chop off a piece of where they touched. Right? They touched. They came in contact. They were close together. You were in the park, and the guy next to you was barbecuing, you were barbecuing, and the pieces of meat touched. It's a problem, right? They touched, right? But it wasn't bishul. So we covered that in Taaruvot. It depends if it's basar Shuman or not, if it's fatty meat or not. It can make a difference.
Spicy.
Yeah, spicy. Whether the flavor travels all over or just the edges are affected, because there's no liquid. What liquid accomplishes is that it transfers the flavor all over. That's what bishul is so strong. All right, so we covered Kli Rishon, and now we're speaking about of Irui, right? So Irui from a Kli Rishon that is Yad Soledet, of course, is still burning. It's a machloket aposkim, because it's no longer a Kli Rishon. It's a machloket what Irui is. The hot water coming down, what is it? Is it like a Kli Rishon, or is it already more like a Kli Sheni? Especially when it's continuously, lo nifsaka kiluach. It's continuously flowing. How hot is that? So I saw that the Prisha in the Dat Rabbeinu Tam and others hold that it's mevashel bekulo. They hold that it is mevashel, that it's completely cooks, and there are some that hold that it's only midrabanan. The irui that's coming down, the hot water that's flowing down.
What is it? Is that the Rishon?
Some say it is, but some say even though it is like a Kli Rishon that cooks the whole thing, they still treat it as Basar bechalv midrabanan. In other words, the Isra would be, and this is it makes a big difference, because if something is only Asr to me midrabanan, in case of Basar bechalv, I can sell it. And this may be very applicable. I mean, chas v'shalom. Obviously, if it happens to a small amount, you may throw it away in the garbage. But what happens if you're a caterer and by mistake this happened to a large amount of food? We need to know what to do. You know, when it comes to shchita, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll learn hilchas shchita and treifas. Let's say a cow is treif. If this is your only cow, you just lost a lot of money. But if you're contracted with the slaughterhouse is you only buy that which is kosher, you're in good shape. Worst comes to worst, you have to shecht another cow now until you find a glatt one. But in some places they don't accept that you do this. Oh, you can't just slaughter as many cows as you want to and only buy what you like. So we have to be more careful to determine if something is really treif, or can I get by? Because I don't have that luxury of just getting rid of it. You see what I mean? So Ashkenazim, especially today, don't eat the back half of the animal because of they don't remove the sciatic nerve, the Giranashe, and so forth. So what do you do with the back? The back is sold to goyim. Now, when you sell the back of the animal to a goy, you can't charge him a Jewish price. Yeah. You have to sell it to him like meat that's not kosher, which is not as expensive as kosher meat. So there's loss. There's a lot of loss involved. That is why kosher meat is more expensive. You're dealing with hashgacha. You're dealing with all kinds of requirements, and depending on the contract with the slaughterhouse, it's not a simple matter. So we want to know what to do with something like this. That in the case of irui, what do we do? Can we sell it? Do we have to throw it away? Because if it's asur behanoah, it means I can't sell it to a goy. So that is why some of these questions are sometimes very, very pertinent. Okay, let me give you a real life example. There are some dishes that call for milk. Soups. One of those soups that calls for milk is zucchini. What is it called? Calabaza in Spanish. No? Calabaza. No. Gourd. Dalat. Yeah. What are they called? Huh? Pumpkin soup. Yeah, something like that. There's another name for it. Squash soup. Yeah, squash soup. But the orange one, the yellow one. Butter squash. That's the one I was looking for. Butter squash soup. Excellent soup. There's various recipes. Some with leeks, some without. But anyway, one of the recipes calls for milk. Now, what is a balabusta? Does everybody know what a balabusta is here? אתה לא יודע מה זה בלבוסטה? כן? זה אישה מרוקאית שיודעת לבשל. I'm just joking. I told that's a Moroccan woman who knows how to cook. Balabusta, yeah. Anyway, the balabusta, the woman in the house that knows that it takes care of all the cooking, she says, what am I going to do now? I want to make this recipe. So there are what's called in ingredients and in cooking, there are alternatives.
What is the problem?
I'm going to get to it. Problem is, you want to eat this soup with a fleische meal, right? You're going to have to. Thank you for raising the problem. I didn't say what the problem was. Yeah, you want to eat this soup with meat. Yes, I sometimes go out of order. Yeah. So, and it calls for milk, and you want to have this soup. So, in ingredients, you have alternatives. You replace or you alternate the milk with mocha mix. How do you like that?
I don't know what the balabusta do to that.
Oh, it works out well. It works very good. And actually, sometimes the mocha mix is even better. It's tastier. It has a sweet. Yeah. Have you? Yeah. Mocha mix.
Rice milk also.
You can use rice milk. I don't know, but soya milk. Yeah, but yeah. So anyway, we have it with our coffee. Mocha mix. Yeah, we have even half and half. Anyway, so you know about all these things. So anyway, all of a sudden the guy took something out of the fridge. He's cooking. He's helping to cook. He's not supposed to do all the cooking. And he put it into this big pot of soup. And the caterer says, "What'd you do?" Says, "What? You asked me to pour this thing, whatever. What thing?" And let me see the carton. Oh, thank God, it's only mocha mix. Right? It's white. I mean, what does he know? You have to make sure it's not OUD. Otherwise, what are you going to do now? You can't serve it. Could you serve it with a fleische meal, by the way?
First.
Just if you have it first.
Then,
If you have it first, there's no problem, right? Yeah, it could be a problem. I'm giving you some examples of where this could be an issue. Was it in a Kli Rishon? Was it in Irui? That's where all these things would make a difference. What do I do now? Do I dispose of it? And so forth. All right. So by Irui, there's a machloket. Some say that it would only be a basar b'cholov, but it would be a midirabanan. Pri Chodosh or Bekiva Eger, others hold that it's a suffix deraisa, because Shema maybe it's mevasha kedei klipo, and therefore they argue that one should aser kedei klipo behana. Just like Irui mevashel kedei klipo, here too it may be it's a suffix deraisa. Suffix deraisa, we're strict, and you would have to remove a klipa, or a klipa would be aser behana. Mikvaot, I think, also discusses that it's a suffix deraisa or not. Okay, that's irui, because irui in itself is a suffix. What about kli sheni? Kli sheni should be easy. Kli sheni, we hold, is not mevashal. We hold it's not, kli sheni is not mevashal. In general, in the Chol Shabbos, the kli sheni is not mevashal. Where does the kli sheni in Shabbos come up? Soup was poured into your plate. Can you put croutons in? You like croutons in your soup. That soup bowl, by the way, by the time it's in your soup is in your bowl, that soup bowl may really be a kli shlishi already, because if they take it out with a ladle, The ladle may be already a kli sheni, according to some. So by the time it reaches your soup bowl, it's a kli shlishi. But anyway, let's even assume it's a kli sheni. Croutons have been baked already, right? The croutons have been baked. So, but there's a problem of bishul acharafiyah. But bishul acharafiyah, is this real bishul? It's a kli sheni. Kli sheni is not mevashel. That is the way we hold. Most hold. Kli sheni is not mevashel, so you don't have to be concerned. You can put croutons into the soup. But some are machmir. No. Bishul acharafiyah is definitely still an issue. It's still an issue. But bishul acharafiyah in a kli sheni should not really be an issue, unless you're machmir in kli sheni, like anything else. All right. So anyway, so that's the concern in Hilchot Shabbat. There's a similar concern. What do we do with basar bechalal over here? So in kli sheni, the yatzal, which we have a machlokes. Mechaber, that we learned in Hilchos Taaruvos legabe kli sheni, is mekel. He's lenient. You don't even need a klipa. Some say kli sheni, of course it's aser. Famous Marshal. Let me see if I wrote it down here. He says, remember when we learned Hilchos Taaruvos, the Marshal is the one that says kli sheni, in Achiname, I agree with you, it does not have so much koach. To be mavliya umaflit ke'echad, if you remember.
Sure. To
do both. To be mavliya, was to give its flavor and to absorb from the other one. But it could do one, so it still has some koach.
They say in some cases.
That's correct. Yeah. Some depending also on the food item. Taz says one should be machmer and basar b'chalav if there's no hefsed meruba. The Pri Chadash and the Bach hold that it's mavliya and maflit at the same time. According to everyone, it's only asur midrabanan. Even if you hold it's mavliya and maflit, it's not mevashel. That's not called bishul. Therefore, what does it help us to know? It helps us that you can have hana from it. Something that was not really mevushal can be fed to your dog, basar b'chalav, because it's not only if it's asur behanoi can you not feed to your dog. But so if it's not, if you know the process through which it's made and there's no cooking involved, even though it has ingredients, there's no isur min Torah to have a piece of cheese on your hamburger. It's midrabanan asur. The only isur of achila of the two is if they're cooked together. So if they're obviously cooked together, it's a problem. Which leads us, of course, to roasting and other things. Are they considered like cooking together? Yes. We're going to talk about it. Yeah. Let's go through it real quickly. All right. 2 gushim. 2 gushim means 2 solids, right? One is hot, the one on the bottom, and the one on top is cold. That leads us to the topic of tatal govar. Shnei gushim means 2 solids, right? One is hot, the one that's on the bottom, and the one on the top is either hot or cold. Makes either way. If it's yatzol ledet bo, it's a machloket, a poskim, also on this one. Pri Megadim holds that even though there's no rotev, there's no sauce, it's an isur derabanan, because it's not derech bishul. Pri Megadim brings down this example. So he says, this is not derech bishul, you don't cook like that. But because it's very hot in yatzol, it would be asur midrabanan. There is one opinion that holds it's an isur deraita. I'm not really sure why, but I saw it and I just, wrote it down and that's it. Now, if you cooked, this is an interesting one. If you cooked meat in a dairy pot that was used that morning, so it's called benyomo. Anything that's used that day is called benyomo. And you cooked meat in that pot, or the other way around, you cooked milk in a meat pot that was used that day, the tafshil, that which you just cooked in that pot, is asur midaraisa. Okay? Anything that is a ben yomo means that it absorbed the flavor from the pot. Had it been cooked last night, so we hold that the tam is pogum. That any flavors left in the walls of the pot are already defective. After 24 hours, they lose their taste. But something that was cooked, used that day, that morning, and you came along and cooked meat, then that tafshil, which is asur, right, is asur midaraisa. So in other words, if by mistake somebody in the household made lasagna in a pot that is used for meat, and that pot was used that morning, that day, or the other way around, they made a roast, goulash, right, in a pot that was used that morning to make something dairy, that dish that was cooked in it is asur midoraita. You have to throw it away.
Unless it has 6.
Huh? Yeah, well, unless of course it's shishin. Yeah, anytime it's bottle. Yeah, but usually that's very difficult to find.
Well,
Yeah,
in our times, my walls
are thicker.
They used to be in the old days. They couldn't mix like we can.
Oh, you're talking about the thinner ones. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, there are some that could be very hard to figure out. By the way, yes, Alessandro.
It's everything of body. We learn that it's just like a tefillah. The tefillah you cannot do it. But
Well, of course
you
not.
do it by mistake.
Yeah,
Your son do it. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, then it can be bad.
right. Then we have another example that I saw over there, that if you cooked basar bechalov in the pot and betoch me'et le'et you cooked another tafshil, okay, that other tafshil is mutar behano according to the Pri Megadim. So Chazon Ish says it's Doraita. Yeah,
Everything that is sur, it will be mutar bana.
that's correct. Anything that's correct.
What
Yeah,
about basar of the halal?
we're going to talk about that. Yeah, we're going to get to that. We spoke about it last time, but we're going to get it.
What you said,
Yeah.
basar b'chalav was cooked in the pot, and
Yeah.
subsequently something part of it was cooked
Yeah.
in the steam pot.
Right.
Is correct? Is that what you
Right.
said? So
Betoch me'et le'et. Right.
wouldn't that be talui on a hold that Hanan introduces again Isra of basar b'chalav, or what it's called nevei?
It may depend on that.
So you call it was
Yeah.
no?
Right.
would parve
Later on, what you cooked in that same pot that is really usher for you to cook, like atchila. But somebody went ahead and cooked something that is potatoes. Yeah. So that potatoes, of course, you can't eat it because of the basar b'chalav in it, but it would be mutar behana according to the Pri Megadim. You would be able to feed it to the dog.
In other words, why it's even a question? Are you asking?
I just didn't.
Yeah, that's all.
Because one might ask, why would it even be a? And the question will be, when the absorptions of heat and milk in the pot were heated,
Right.
is that called again the basar?
That's the question. Is it again the basar b'chalav problem? Yeah. Okay. Let's just go on because these are just all examples of various levels of heat. Okay, your bishul. Let's say you have a hot piece of meat that you cut it with a dairy knife by mistake. Of course, this is all by mistake, right? So we know that this poses a problem, as it is for us to eat. It poses a problem for the knife that may require now hagala, right? It poses a problem with the meat. How much of the meat becomes usher as a result of a knife that is ben yomo? It was used, obviously it's all ben yomo, and a hot piece of meat that you use that's yatzoledetbo.
Just if it's ben yomo, but if somebody take a knife for milk,
You're
nobody use it.
You're safe. You're
It's
safe.
okay.
Not the knife, but the meat.
The meat is okay.
Yeah, the meat
And
is
knife,
sure.
so-
Anytime you're dealing with an Aina Ben Yoma, you have less of a problem. Sure. So now, the Taz says this is also because of the sakin cutting through the knife. The knife is hot. Yat soledetbo. He says it's also in the Torah, also behano. Unless you have shishim against the edge of the knife.
So
The knife you have to make kasher. You have to kasher it.
So caching is you.
Not in all cases. In most cases, every utensil has to be kosher depending on how it's used. Knives would require hagala in hot water or ribun, depending on what made it usher, what degree or level of heat, how it became usher. Yeah, okay. Obviously, some items require libun, be'ish, hot fire, right? So anyway, in this case, that's a Taz. The Taz, I saw the Taz on this. He says that unless you have shishin keneged the lahav, if it's a piece of meat, you may have 60 against the lahav, and it would not be a problem. Otherwise, he says it would be awesome in a Torah if somebody cut with a dairy knife that piece of meat.
Not take the klipa, and then it will be okay.
No, not with a knife. No, not if it's a hot piece of. Remember, it's a hot piece of meat.
But he take the klipa from here and here.
Yeah,
That
not enough. Not with a hot piece of. Not with a hot piece of meat. We'll be learning this in Halacha Basar B'Chalav later on. What happens, how much is Aser. Yeah, but here we're talking about only if it's Aser min Torah or not. The Taz says yes.
And the basar b'chalav, that's not the same thing as Taaruvot went from Taaruvot, no?
Concerning what?
Because it would be something else that we'll be talking later. The klipa becomes itself nevei. So
Right.
It's affecting more.
Okay, yes. We'll talk about that, yeah. That's another issue. Minchas Yaakov, I think the Chavas Das hold that it's mutar behano because this is not derech bishul. When you cut, even though dairy and meat got mixed, dairy was absorbed, that's not called derech bishul. All right, tzli. What about roasting? Also machloket aposkim I see here. The Pri Chodesh says it's also in the Torah. Tzli is considered like bishul. Yeah, according to the Pri Chodesh, it's considered exactly like bishul. He says we learned it out from Korban Pesach. Yeah, and the Krisi Plesi and others hold the same. Chavas Das or Chashulchan hold that tzli is not also in the Torah. No liquid is involved.
What does Shuchan Aruch hold?
No, it's not. It's not. We will see some examples later on. We will see some examples later on. Here, the question is not if something is asur. The question is only if it's asur behana too. So not all of these examples that I'm giving you, the Mechaber has something to say about. That's why I have to quote to you all of these other Rishonim or Achronim, because he doesn't specify exactly. So what's the din of tzli in general? Well, tzli in general, look at the Halacha Taaruvot. It's not exactly the same like bishul. It isn't. If they're next to each other, for those of you who remember the Halacha Taaruvot, they're next to each other. It depends if it's fatty or not. There's no doubt that it's not the same like bishul. So that's why the question is it asur min Torah, that which became asur, is it asur min Torah or not? Some say yes, some say not, because tzli is really not like bishul. Well, maybe it is, because it's hot, you're cooking together, right? You have a hamburger. What about frying? Let's go to frying. Tigun. What's the din of tigun, right? Let's say somebody made something with butter, right? So I think the crazy place, there are quite a few that hold that it's exactly like tzli. Tigun, frying and roasting are the same. Yeah. Chochmas Sodom, they hold like it's tzli. From the Meiri, it's mashal that there's a machlokes rishonim, and he holds that it's not like bishul. But it's also midrabanan, and I think that's also apparent from Rashi and Tosfos. Okay, smoking, or chamei tveria. That's another example. Me'ushan and chamei tveria, forms of heat. Have you ever been to Tveria and seen the hot bubbles from the water? What if somebody were to do it in there? Or what if somebody were to smoke basar and cheese together?
According to, what was it, Rabbi Elyahu Kin, because it's being heated.
Yeah, it's a machloket, right? So it's a machloket. The poskim in this case, some say it's asur midoraisa, some say it's a suffix doraisa. Me'ushan is a question that was never really resolved, smoking. Pri Chodesh distinguishes between me'ushan, which is also midoraisa, and mevushal and chamei tveria. In chamei tveria, that it's also midrabanan. Shach, levush, chochmas odom, it's mashal that they both have the rabbanon. All right, meliach. Meliach is salting, two things together. Everybody holds it as a rabbanon. Kovush, we covered last time, is a rabbanon. And an interesting question that I saw is there bishul achar bishul in basar b'chalav? Remember the question?
That's exactly the question.
Is there bishul achar bishul? You cooked something together, it's basar b'chalav, and now cooking it again. On Shabbat we say en bishul achar bishul. How about in basar b'chalav? Something that was already cooked.
Yeah, formulating the same question.
Yeah.
The milk was cooked separately.
Oh.
Now they're being cooked together.
Oh, did you hear what Ilan said? When we say bishul achar bishul in basar b'chalav, what are we talking about? Are we talking about that the two were already cooked? The milk was cooked, the meat was cooked, and now you're cooking them together?
Or they were cooked already.
Or they were already cooked together. So almost, I think everybody agrees that if they were cooked separately, and now you're cooking them together, it's asur.
It's a doraisa.
So these are doraisa because that's the whole idea of cooking them together. The question is, if they had already been cooked together, are you transgressing the same issue by cooking them all over again? You understand that question?
Another issue.
Yeah, is there another issue? Yeah. It's all a question of what is bishul. In other words, what are we accomplishing? In Shabbat, ein bishul achar bishul. Why? Because the first bishul basically already prepared the food. It cooked it.
Made it edible.
It made it edible. So the second time around, I'm not adding anything to this piece of meat that has already been cooked. But in basar b'chalav, wait a minute. Maybe it's not just about making something edible. It's about the process of cooking them together on top of the fire. You see the question? It depends what the problem is. If the problem of bishul according to the Torah is heat, then maybe in basar b'chalav too, just the heat. If the problem is making it edible, and the same thing applies to basar b'chalav, making it edible, well, it's already edible. So that is the question of, is bishul achar bishul on Shabbat the same as bishul achar bishul on basar b'chalav? Maybe the concepts are different. By Shabbat, it's a problem of making it edible. Once I've made it edible, I'm not really doing anything to it. Cooking it again, what did I accomplish? But maybe by basar b'chalav, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to take milk and meat that have been cooked and cook it again. I'm performing the same avera chas v'shalom. Maybe there's a machloket in that. Various opinions of whether it would be an isser or it would not be an isser. Okay, for those of you who were not here I think the first year we covered that microwave. Rabbi Elyahu should have a refuah shlema. He holds that it's a form of cooking today that's used, and you cannot cook it. Of course, you cannot use a microwave. No, not on time. We're talking about during the week basar b'chalav. It's Yudoraita. It will be. It's a form of cooking. Yeah. Now, you know what? Really, the reality is that the same question of microwave really belongs with the question of electricity. If I'm using heat through electricity versus through water and fire and gas, what's the din? What's the din of electricity? So on Shabbat, it's a similar question. It's a derabanan. Is it a derabanan because this is not the regular form of mevashel? Or is it a doraita because it's heat? It produces heat. So by basar b'chalav too, the problem is that I cannot bring about the two together through a form of heat, or it really has to be bishul. Right? It really has to be bishul. Well, maybe this is not really bishul. You see, that's the question. Some of those stoves, there's no fire. It's just, you put them down, there's heat coming up. Is that the same or not? So these are some of the questions that are raised by the Achronim, especially, the poskim of the last few generations, and how do we deal with this? Is it the same or is it different? Are the concepts the same of Shabbat as they are in basar b'chalav, or maybe the concepts are different, like we saw in bishul achar bishul? That's basically the various examples that we had. As far as the timing of the bishul, some hold that as soon as it becomes kemachal ben drusai, which is either a third or half cooked, which is somewhat edible, it would be asur behana. Behana. If a piece of meat fell into the milk and you took it out after a couple seconds, it may not be asur behana, but it's still asur be'achila. Right? Oh, you caught it in time after a few seconds. Okay, maybe, depending on how long it was there, you saved the food. But you know what? When something is boiling, on top of the fire it's bubbling, even a couple seconds will emit flavor. It will absorb and emit. So we don't know for sure. So it would be asur be'achila. The question is if it's asur be'hana. So the issue of hana is kemachal. We hold that it's kemachal ben drusai, or that which makes it edible, which we hold is a third. Shlish bishul. We hold is. Yeah.
Thing to say there.
Yeah.
How do you calculate the time? First, you have to heat it up before it starts to melt.
Right.
So heating up does not factor into the calculation. It doesn't start to actually cook until the water has been heated up.
Right.
So it says first, from the overall time duration, subtract the time it takes to get the water.
Right.
And then with what remains, take a third or a half of that, which makes much smaller time saving.
Yeah, you're right. Ilan is right because there are recipes that call for preheating the oven.
Right.
You know what preheat means? Turn on the oven to 350 for 10-15 minutes. Let it warm, and then put in your cookies or your cake or whatever. Because it takes a while till it heats up. So that's a question that we discussed. It's not cooking yet. It's not hot. You put in something, but even if you put your hands in the water, and by the way, I don't recommend you putting your hands in oil to see if it's hot.
You might find out.
Yeah. But he's right. The first few seconds, it's not even hot. It would not be a problem. The real problem, yeah.
The Chazon Ish actually talking about a different question regarding that, but he explains it that way. How long is actually the third or the half? How much time?
Right. So anyway, that's as far as the issue of basar b'chalav midoraisa goes in the various degrees. That some of them may be an issue, may not be. If they're issue be'achila, it's not going to be an issue be'hana. And the reason for that is because even if you hold it's not the rice, it's still an Isur D'Rabbanan. An Isur D'Rabbanan means that you cannot have it, regardless. The question, however, is what happens with different kinds of animals that are not Asur Min Torah. Basar Chaya, okay, Basar Of, or Chalav, Isha, the milk of a woman. Yeah, so this we'll cover a little bit more next time on Thursday. The only reason I brought it up right now is because what we've done right now is seen examples of a real basar b'chalav that is aser midirabanan. In other words, it's the real iser, but because it is lacking in the bishul, it suffers. In other words, in being the real iser, but it's still an iser derabanan. But it's the real iser, as opposed to begin with an iser derabanan.
Yeah, in other words, there is a circumstance that we is the Isser, even though you're talking about...
Did you see the difference? One is an Isser D'Rabbanan to begin with. Basar off. Chicken with milk is an Isser D'Rabbanan.
Right.
To begin with. The Torah says it's okay. Versus an Isser D'Oraisa, like real meat, beef with milk, but it was not really cooked according to the regular method of cooking, which is therefore at least also mineral. What could be the difference between the two? They're both Isser D'Rabbanan. There can be a difference in something called Chaticha Hareuya Litkabed. For those of you who remember Hilchos Taaruvot, Chaticha Ruya Litkabed, Lo Betela Afilu Be'elef. In other words, if you have a piece of meat, a nice slice of meat, even if you have 1,000 other pieces, they will never cancel out this nice sized piece of meat. There are various criteria for Chaticha Ruya Litkabed. It's one of those things that it's not Batel Afilu Be'elef. There are various such examples of things that are not Batel Afilu Be'elef. So, Chaticha Ruya Litkabed in Basar b'chalav, okay, has some unique features. What are the unique features? First of all, if you recall, anything which is an Iser Balua does not qualify for Chaticha Ruya Litkabed. Remember that?
Sure.
It's an Iser Balua, means you have a piece of meat.
The Isser that is
The Iser, yeah. You have a piece of meat, kosher. It somehow became treif, not because it is treif, because it was cooked in together with non-kosher food. So it absorbed some non-kosher ingredients. So it's treif. If that gets mixed up with other foods, it will be batal if there is rov or shishim or whatever. It will not be batal filu be'elav, even though it's a big piece chaticha ruya litkabed. Why? Because the isur is balua.
The chaticha itself is not the Isser. It's
right.
just transporting it.
Exactly. Now, here, Basar b'chalav, as I will do, and what I will do Thursday in the beginning of this year, because I want to get ahead, is we'll go through all the areas where Basar b'chalav is different than all other Isurim. One of the things that is different about Basar b'chalav is there's no such a thing as Isur balua. It is, that is the Isur. Isur balua means I have a piece of meat kosher, but it absorbed something not kosher. So what's that non-kosher? The balua, that which has been absorbed. You follow me? Yeah. Basar b'chalav, the mixture of the two, the milk in the meat that has been absorbed, that's, even though that's the balua, that's the Isser. It's combining the two. So therefore, it will be a chaticha hareuya litkabed. It will continue to be a chaticha, even though it's an Isser balua. You follow me, right? Even though the milk is absorbed. Okay, now the problem is, what happens if that piece of meat, the basar b'chalav piece of meat, got mixed up with other pieces of meat. Okay? So we have a Taaruvos over here. Okay? In a Taaruvos, what happens in a Taaruvos? We said it's not bottle, right? It's not bottle. It's a real piece of meat. It's not going to be bottle. It's chaticha ruya litkabed. Wait a minute. But let me ask you something. Chaticha ruya litkabed is not bottle afilu be'elef. Is that a doraita or derabanan?
Well, the shear is...
No, is that Isser, that it's not batal afilu be'elaf, is that a Deora? It's a Derabanan. It is batel berov. Any piece of meat is batal berov. It's just the Chachamim said it's big, it's not batal afilu be'elaf. That is a Derabanan. Hey, but Derabanan, I remember learning, there's not something that is also Derabanan, is not also Behana. Right? That's what we're learning right now? That's what we're learning now? So we'll cover this point on Thursday. It's an interesting deal that I saw somebody bring down. I have to look into it again. This is a Doraita that has become a Derabanan. Does that mean that this Derabanan right now says I can have Hana from this? I can't eat it because it's not Batul Be'elef, but at least I can sell it. Or this is not or the real Isra is still a Doraita. It's not a Basar B'chalav Derabanan. No. It's really a Basar b'chalav deoraita.
It just doesn't have the rest of the stuff deoraita.
Exactly. It's just that in the mixture, it does not make everything also deoraita. It's also midrabanan, right?
Because if you're going to start, you have to deduct the size of the size of the Hanan, and the rest you can.
No, so that's the question. You understand? Because if it's a basar b'chalav derabbanan, like chicken and milk, I can sell it. I just can't eat it. So is this mixture a derabbanan, or is this mixture a deoraita, right? But the shear is a derabbanan. Because if the shear is a derabbanan, but it's a real issa deoraita, which it is, maybe I can't benefit from it either.
I have one.
You see what I mean?
I have one piece. That
Well, no, but why? But why? Because the issue of the Rabbanan made, they made it across the board. They were not mechanic, whether it's this kind of an issue, this kind. In other words, once they say it's asr, it's asr. In other words, I don't gain anything by being this basar b'chalav coming down one level of the writer to the
I
Rabbanan.
understand why it's coming down. The meat that absorbs doesn't become an as a rabbanan. It itself remains a chanan d'oraisa. The piece that absorbs the milk.
Beseder, yeah.
So now I'm only looking at how does the presence of the that absorbs the milk affect the other meats that are mixed with it.
Right.
And there I have the problem that as a chaticha chabed, it ushers the other pieces in the pot.
That's all.
And this isser never was a d'oraisa.
Exactly.
That was always a d'rabbanan.
Right.
So
but here my question is, can I have hana from this whole mixture?
From the mixture. So as far as I recall, the answer is deduct whatever money
so we will see.
We will see.
There are times that you can deduct. You're right. There are times that you can deduct that which you cannot eat.
The value.
The value,
and
right? And then sell the rest. There are times that we can do that, and that's one of the things that we will discuss next time. Another thing we will discuss next time is the next seif that deals with a drink that the Syrian Jews make called shrabeloz, which is the milk or the white juice made out of almonds, which, what can you have a glass of that juice when you're eating a steak? Oh, you're having milk? People don't know. There's a problem with marit ayin. It's a similar question that we have not with this juice, but we have with a creamer being served in most banquets and weddings. You have creamer for your coffee, but I just had meat. There's a big difference because sometimes certain things are known. They're known. When something is known, there's no marit ayin, right? So people know that probably what's on the table is a creamer. Yeah. People know. Yeah.
What about veggie burger?
Veggie burger too. People usually, it depends, of course, on how it's being served, with what else it's being served. We'll discuss these questions later on because there are variations to all of this. There are margarine. Margarine may look like butter, but it's margarine. It's not dairy. So these are the kinds of things that may not be a problem per se, but may pose a different kind of problem called marit ayin. We'll leave it for next time.